I have a question.
Yes.
I want to know, is this going to be the same meat material that we had in the last sessions?
No, it's not. This is going to be creating dynamic characters. So last time was about the 3x structure, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today, just to kind of give some background info, but it's more about creating characters.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Yeah. Hi, everyone. If you just joined, thank you for coming. This is going to be recorded, so if you're not comfortable sharing your face, you don't have to. And if you're not comfortable sharing your voice, you don't have to. You can talk through the chat. But if you are, then cool. Nice to see you. We're just going to hang out for a little bit, just to let people join. Oh, hi. Oh, someone from Australia. Let me see this in the chat. Wow, thank you so much for joining all the way from Australia. This is amazing. Um, what time is it over there?
It's
Oh, Linda, you're
it's midday.
okay, that's not bad. That's good.
Mm.
Yeah. I've got a friend in the UK, so it's like in the o'clocks in the mornings over there. He's sleeping. Um, yeah, it's always we're trying to write a script together, so it's always kind of a struggle to find a time that we're both available. Anyway, cool. So it looks like we've got a good amount of people. Awesome. If you are, oh, hi from Canada. Thank you so much for joining. If you've got your mic on, um, you want to go ahead and mute it, I'd appreciate it, just in case there's any like background noise. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay, let's present. Okay, cool. So this is Screenwriting 101 with Mercedes Garcia. Hi, my name is Mercedes Garcia. Just a little bit about me. I have worked for Nickelodeon in development. All of this is development. So this is not writing for them. This is basically, if you don't know what development is, it's looking for new content to create. So it's like on the business side. Okay. Nickelodeon, Guerrilla Flicks, they have made Jackass and Ridiculousness. 3 Plus Studios with Mexican actor Eugenio Derbez, famously known for Overboard, the remake, and How to Be a Latin Lover. His new show Acapulco is on Apple TV Plus if you would like to stream. And American High, they did Hulu's Big Time Adolescence. I got my BA in specifically screenwriting from Cal State Northridge, and I am class of 2024 for an MFA in screenwriting from Stevens College. So yeah, these are some of my accomplishments. A short that I made just won Best Drama. I've made it as like semifinalist and quarterfinalist and Holly Shorts and Scriptapalooza and LA International. Okay, that's enough about me. I don't like to brag. I currently work for the Strasbourg International Film Festival as what's called a programming specialist. So we have like different programs, which are basically genres of films, and mine is family drama. Today's the last day for the festival, so it's a little bit late if you want to see the films, but tune in next year. All profits go to benefiting art programs. This is theater program specifically, but it's like arts programs for high school students. Okay, cool. So an important question to ask yourself that I say this every time, but I say it because I'm serious about it. Why screenwriting? Why is your story specifically being told in the screenwriting medium? Like, why is it going to be on the big screen? Why can't it be a book? Why can't it be a podcast? Or like literally a painting, a song, you know? So screenwriting and film in itself is a very audio visual medium, and it's beautiful because it allows you to do so much, something that a photograph can't. A photograph can't produce sound. But why would it be better to write it as a screenplay and as opposed to like an actual book or a novel, or you know like a real play that's acted on the stage? What can screenwriting give you? A lot of people just kind of gravitate to screenwriting because they think they're going to get rich. Yeah, the clicking. Sorry, there's clicking. If you can mute your mic, I'd appreciate it. I don't want to have to like mute everybody because it's kind of annoying. Okay, hold on. I guess I'll just mute people. Oh, did it stop? I think the clicking stopped. No, no, it didn't. Y'all, how do you mute people on this? Do I go to security? If I allow people to unmute themselves?
Night, leave me alone. I'm on a mission.
Oh, yeah. Does anyone know how to mute everyone? Should I just Google this real quick? Sorry, guys, 1 second. I'm Googling how to mute participants on Zoom. Okay, click participants. So I think I have to stop. Oh, I think I did it. Okay, no, sorry, let me stop share. I think I have to click stop share in order to do it. Okay, participants, there we go. And then mute all, perfect. Okay, there, everyone's muted. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. If you have something or if you want to like unmute yourself, you can just like type it in the chat. Okay, here we go. Beautiful. Okay, so yeah, a lot of people, oh yes, you raised your hand, sir. Let me go back. No, see, is this why I want to do this? Because I have to stop sharing every time. Please. Okay, yes, the person who raised their hand should be able to unmute themselves now. Okay. Oh, no, it's okay. Just wanted to say you mean discussively. Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah. Why screenwriting? A lot of people think they're gonna come into this industry to be rich. And like, sure, you can be, but you really gotta love it because it's got a lot of formatting and it's a really like specific kind of niche way to write. Anyway, that's my little spiel. Okay, let's talk characters. So this is kind of like a little bit of semantics from literature. A lot of people use the term dynamic to mean like interesting or like multidimensional and complex. But really all dynamic means is that by the end of the story, your character has to change. Okay. And static means they stay the same. So a static character that doesn't change by the end of the story can be interesting and they can be multidimensional and complex and compelling, whatever. This literally all it means is that they change. Okay. So how do you create a dynamic character? My first step would be to be super specific when you are actually in the process of creating your character. A lot of people like to do it before they write. I think that is a good idea. Some people do it in the act of writing. And I find that you're going to need a lot of rewrites because your character like is not super fleshed out. So I say try to think of it all before you actually start writing. You've got to think about essentially, I feel like these are the essential traits that a character needs. What's their role in the story? So are they the protagonist, the antagonist? Are they a friend? Are they literally like a background character? Do you see them once? Yeah, think about their role. Then obviously, like, what's their name? For screenplays, which is kind of cool, you don't need their first and last name. You don't really need their full name. What we have are what's called character IDs. So that's like essentially a way to identify your character. So I gave this example last time. Yes, it was sent a copy of the presentation. I gave this example last time that like if you have a character named like Timothy Chalamet the Fifth, I don't want to write Timothy Chalamet the Fifth every single time. So I'm just gonna write Tim, and you're gonna know that Tim is Timothy Chalamet. Or you can literally write T, or like the number 23, or just the fifth, or red or blue, literally anything. But you have to denote that that's like that character. So if they have a nickname, you can go by their nickname. Their age. Again, you don't have to be super specific. You don't have to say like 27 with like 6 months and 3 weeks, because literally no one cares. It's like, a child between the ages of 6 and 10, early 20s, mid-age, like a senior citizen. You can have those kind of things. I like to be specific within like the 10-year range. So I like to say, early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, for my character specifically, just because coming from the business side, I also tend to think, and I'm also a director. So I also tend to think in terms of casting, which I'll go over a little bit in description. I don't want to have to necessarily find someone that's exactly 27 years old just because I said it was in the script. That would limit myself, in case there's somebody who's like 23, but, can look a little older maybe, or doesn't matter if they're don't look 27, but they're like a really good actor. Anyway, same for description. I kind of like to leave like race out of it, just to broaden my horizons in terms of casting. Unless it's like absolutely super essential for the story, and sometimes it really is. So that's cool. But also kind of clothes too. A lot of people like to say, they were wearing like they have a red sweater, and like a beret and something, and like a necklace or whatever. Like unless it's super essential, to the story, that you need that specific necklace and like the specifically red sweater because it's thematically important. I don't really think you need it. Just kind of like, always dresses in baggy clothes, or, always look sharp, I think is good enough. I think it's more important to describe kind of how they act, and in terms of like how they move, like walks with the swagger, you know what I'm saying? Just to kind of leave that a little bit broader, but also give you a visual image of, what the character might look like. Okay. I was also going to say something about that. I saw on Reddit, that like a while ago, that this guy asked, how do you write female characters? And my answer is like literally just like everybody else. How do you describe them? Again, like I said, just like everybody else. There's a subreddit which is kind of funny. It's like r/men writing women, and it's like guys saying that, she had like a huge bosom and like a nice butt. And again, that could be super essential to the story. But unless it is super essential, because a lot of comedies, they have like big breasts and it's like a comedic plot. Unless it's super essential, I would just leave that out. Again, in terms of casting, you just want to leave it open. Okay. Should the character traits be introduced within the first, yes, 15 to 20 pages? Yes. So we talked about that in another lesson, but essentially what you want to do when you first introduce a character, type their name in all caps, then usually in parentheses, put their age. So again, like mid-20s, whatever, and then have a description. So immediately, like the first thing you do when you introduce a character, have a description of what they look like and what they feel like. Yeah, and all your main in the first act, like all your main characters, generally, this is not like a set in stone rule. They should be introduced in the first act, which is again the first 15 to 20 pages ish. Just because the first act is basically you're setting up the rest of the story. So if you have a character that like comes in the third act and it's totally brand new, we're gonna be like, whoa, where'd this guy come from? What are you doing here? There's not enough time to set up all that you need to know about that character. Okay, cool. But sometimes there are successful films that, bring in new characters in the second act, and they're used for subplots, and that's okay, as long as like their arc is not super huge and can fit within the time frame. Just because it's hard, it's not like a sudden rule that like it's bad. It's just difficult to do. So I would advise against it if you're brand new. Okay. Next, we got to talk about their core traits. You don't necessarily have to specifically in your script say this person is a coward or like, they're very brave, something like that. But think about it and have it in your mind and then show it with actions. Cool. Same thing. This is all like to think about before you're actually writing the script. Okay, there's a question. Suppose the different acts talk about different events. Yeah, then that's okay. Okay, so if you've got like a Tarantino kind of movie, where you know there's like one story and then there's another story and another story, like that's totally okay. But I don't know if you still kind of like notice in Tarantino, all the little snippets, it's called a hub and spoke film because like all the character and their stories are different hubs, different spokes, and they meet together at a central hub. So anyway, I don't know if you noticed, like for Pulp Fiction, for example, all their little stories all happen and are introduced in Act 1. So your acts don't necessarily need to be exactly like 25, 30 pages. You can have a longer Act 1 and a shorter Act 2, or like a really short Act 3. That's not super like important. Again, it's not a hard set rule. Act 1 is usually just used to denote in terms of like I'm setting up the story, and then Act 2 is where like all the conflict is happening, and Act 3 is, you know, the climax and then the resolution. So that's what that is. That's what it's talking about. But yeah, you can totally bring new characters in if you're doing a film like that. That is a-okay. Okay, so their core traits. What was I saying? Yeah. So yeah, if they're a coward or if they are, you know, brave or something like that, you've got to ask yourself in terms of subtext, why? You know, what motivates them to be a coward, or like what motivates them to be brave? Because, you know, even in our own lives, every single action that we take is kind of a reflection of our past events, you know. Like riding a horse, for example. I love riding horses, but let's say that I like fell off and I'm scared. Whenever I interact with the horse, I might be kind of like hesitant. And you know, the subtext is that something happened to me. So you always got to think about that. Okay, and flaws, just that makes important, cool characters that seem realistic, because everybody has flaws in life. And how can you change if there are no flaws? Okay, I have another question. Lots of shows seem to do flashbacks excessively. How do you go about writing them? In sequence or the way we see it in the series? That's honestly totally up to you. Flashbacks, yeah, they do them excessively. There's like a rule in film school that's like no flashbacks. Flashbacks are bad, but I don't necessarily think so. I think that they're just difficult for new writers because there really are no rules. So if you want to start a movie with a flashback, that's cool, as long as it furthers the plot, right? If you want to have a flashback in like Act 2 or like spread out throughout, I think that's cool. But I think the problem is that flashbacks are just giving exposition in terms of, you know, just offering like information to clear up plot holes instead of actually like giving us information on, you know, again with subtext, like why does this character act the way they do? A lot of films do it really well, and those flashbacks are used effectively. But yeah, so just think about that. The flashback has to relate to the character's goal in this particular story. It has to further the plot, and it has to offer something deeper in terms of like inner feelings and morality and stuff like that, I think, to be effective. Okay, another question. How often can a book be turned into a movie script? Literally like as often as you want. You can turn anything into a movie script. A good script, I mean, who knows, you know? But yeah, they can always be, and it's up to you. I personally like faithful adaptations. The like things that follow the original content exactly, just because I don't know, I'm like that and I don't like change. But there are a lot of adaptations that completely derail and they just keep the main premise and they're really great. So yeah, you can literally do anything. Okay, Saving Mr. Banks. Yes, prime example. Great job. Okie dokie. Character arc. That just means, the progression of the story. How does the character progress? And it doesn't necessarily again mean change. Usually it does, but just how are they different from the beginning to the end? Okay. And then think about their worldview. Like supervillains, they usually think people are bad and that they're the heroes and like everyone is terrible and out to hurt me. And versus like actual superheroes, they're like everything is good. People are innately good. So think about how your character, views the world. And in a more realistic terms, like, people are so nuanced. There's a lot of gray in there. So, just think about maybe how you view the world and then base a character kind of off of your thought process. Not exactly you, obviously, but just kind of during that thought process. Okay. And then their wants versus their needs. That's important to understand because let's say like you have a character that just got out of a relationship and they have not healed yet. They really just want that comfort of a relationship, right? But what they really need is to take time for themselves and focus on interpersonal growth. So how does their want, affect their need, and how does that affect the plot of the story? Okay. Also, what makes them unique? So yeah, why that trope that I said, about breakups, everyone literally goes through a breakup. But why are they unique? How do they process that information? And what actions do they take that make them an individual that is compelling? Okay. Also, their mission and agenda. So their mission is often sometimes like confused with their goal, but I like to think about it in terms of like a business or like a school that they have like mission statements, and a lot of them are like to promote equity and equality and stuff like that, right? So that's kind of like your life motto, like I want to live my life as a good person offering, my services to like teach and help better people, right? um that's not what I'm going out and setting to do like every single day, but it's kind of just always there in the back of my mind, like, you should be a good person. So how does that affect the way I act and the way I interact with people? So same thing, agendas. um I think about this a lot with like movies like Mean Girls, um that they are acting nice, right? But they have a hidden agenda. And stuff like Succession, the TV show. So people are always constantly making moves, and what they portray on the outside may not always reflect what they're thinking on the inside. Okay, another question. Autobiography based on fiction's character. Is that possibly? But oh, an autobiography based on a fictional character. Sure. I mean, I always say there's don't even worry about market and stuff like that, because there's a market for everybody. If you think about like OnlyFans guys buying like underwear, whatever, that's weird a little bit to me. But I mean, each to each their own, like there's a market for everything. Yeah, so totally you can do honestly like whatever you want. Okay. So yeah, so think about specifics. If you're like, for example, if your character is a doctor, I don't think it's enough just to say, okay, they're a doctor. You got to think about, why did they decide to become a doctor? Did they just want to have a good job to make a lot of money? Were they pressured by their parents? Do they come from a family full of doctors? Do they actually like want to help people out of the goodness of their heart? Because those are all completely different people. And they affect, how they practice. So again, what kind of medicine do they specialize in? Are they an animal doctor? Are they a vet? Are they a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Are they a pediatrician? You know what I'm saying? Those are all different people. Just what do their working hours look like? Stuff like that, just to get you thinking more about whatever your character is. Okay, another question. But a story based on your own experiences. Okay, so you're saying an autobiography based on your own experiences, but like the characters are fictitious? I think that, yeah, that happens a lot. I think you often see that in books as opposed to screenplays. Um, but yeah, I don't see why not. In terms of a business standpoint, I would honestly say write the book first and then hope that it sells and then write your screenplay or pitch the screenplay story because you'll say, oh, I already have this like best-selling book or whatever. Here's content that I can make. People generally like to see that better in terms of business. Okay, why a character is the way they are not related to the essential themes and plot of the story? Would oneself still explore that? So if you have a character that's just like not essential, what? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me read this again. Okay, the way they are is not essential to the plot. I think just have it in the back of your mind because oftentimes like you're not even gonna see like for example like a horse person, right? That they're scared of horses. Um, maybe I'm writing a screenplay about like a girl riding a bike. You're never gonna see a horse. Um, but maybe she has like a little bit of a tendency to be scared on a bike too because it reminds her of like a horse and like that's never explained, but it's still there. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just important to flesh your characters out as much as you feel is necessary. Does that make sense? A lot of people like to really go in depth and they're like, oh, they've got like green eyes and like thick wavy hair. Um, and they've got like a freckle on their back and like that never comes up. Um, that's fine if you want to have that in your mind's eye, but it's really just to flesh out as much as you want. I hope that helped. Hope that was the answer. Oh, you've written the book but are changing the context. Oh, great job. Cool. So yeah, I think that's fine. Honestly, I think you do a great job. Okay. So yeah, another way to give your character dynamism is to give them a goal. So goals, we talked about this a little bit last time. If you were here about the 3-act structure, so this is what I'm talking about. Goals help propel the plot forward. And by like your first act, you should essentially like introduce your protagonist, set up the status quo. So that means like set up whatever world they're in. And then you have what's called this little like red dot is called an inciting incident. So that means that their status quo and their worlds that they know is disrupted. So think of the Matrix. His inciting incident, he's like living his life, right? He's in the Matrix. Neo's inciting incident is when he sees the computer light up and is like, Neo, like I know who you are, or whatever. That's disrupting, you know, his reality, literally. Okay, cool. And then you have like a moment where they're like, no, this is not real, and they're in denial, and they're like, I want my life to stay the same. But then something has to happen. It's called the point, like a turning point or like a point of no return, where like they cannot go back. And in the Matrix's case, it's where they're sitting like on the chairs and like Morpheus is like, okay, take the red pill or the blue pill. And it's literally like, okay, once you make a decision, you can't go back. So, you know, you better choose wisely. And again, he literally can't go back to the way things were. And now he has a new goal. So that's important for creating a dynamic character and for also propelling your plot forward. Okay, cool. And by the end of, you know, your story, it doesn't matter. They can either reach the goal or not. But what's important is that they are actively working towards reaching that goal. So all these little rises and falls or whatever are just conflicts. And you introduce conflicts that are in opposition of that goal to hopefully get them to change, to learn something about themselves. Okay, yeah, so goals, yeah, they give the character an avenue for change and they evolve the character and make them more sympathetic. So yeah, nobody likes, you know, like the know-it-all kid in school who like doesn't even have to study, gets straight A's, and like literally does nothing. That's not compelling at all. A more compelling story, for colleges when you're applying, it's always like they're looking for somebody who was struggling in life. It's always more compelling to see someone who like came from a broken home, didn't have the financial resources, like was on verge of homelessness, and still managed to overcome all of this to pursue their education and get good grades. Because you sympathize with them more. So same thing, you don't want it to be like all traumatic and sad, but just makes them more sympathetic. Okay, let's see. Please explain audience fears. What are we looking at? Oh, okay. So what it says on in the little diagram, that the audience is afraid that they will not achieve their goal. So this is like, okay, so in like Act 2, this is what's called fun and games. I'm gonna give the example of, let's do like the Lion King. Okay, so the turning point is, the inciting incident is that like his dad dies, right? And like the turning point, that's he cannot go back. So Timon and Pumbaa are like, okay, let's go Hakuna Matata and let's live our life and be happy. That's giving him hope, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe he actually will be happy and he can just like live his life in the jungle or whatever. And then the turning point up here is where Nala comes, the female lion, and she's like, yo, you got to go back. I haven't seen the Lion King in a long time, so I'm sure that's what she says. And then this is like Scar is there, and he's got like all this stuff to overcome, and they're like, oh no, I don't think he's actually going to be the king. Like Scar seems too powerful, and he suffers losses. And this is the crashing point, is like the lowest of the low. It's usually like in superhero movies where they've lost something immeasurable, and they're like, I can never come back from this at all, and they're feeling terrible about themselves. And then somebody usually prompts them to get up their strength or whatever, and it's like, no, you can do it, go back for that final battle. And then up here is that like final battle. So yeah, I can think about this in terms of like superhero movies. Okay, I had better examples when I said it last time, but I totally just blanked. I've only been watching Harry Potter recently, so that's all I have in my mind. Oh, we can do Harry Potter. Okay. So let's talk about like the first one. Okay, usually when the audience hopes, that is the main character gaining new skills. Oh, in terms of like the Matrix too. Okay, so that's literally when Neo is learning all those skills on the headset. He's like learning karate or kung fu or whatever. That's his on the upside, and he like has finally jumped over the building, and he's like, wow, I'm a master at the Matrix. And then this is him fighting what is that guy, the one with the glasses, I don't know, the bad guy. And this is when like all the people on the ship die because they get killed by the guy who like betrays them, and they're like, oh my god, we're never gonna make it, right? And then his girlfriend is like, yeah, you can do it, and then they fight. Okay, I hope that made sense. Where can you get that diagram? I will give you the slides in an email, so you will have this diagram for yours to keep forever. Okay. Okay. So same thing with flaws. Usually their flaws impact their goal, and they kind of, in addition to like the antagonist, they limit themselves from reaching their goal faster than they would have if they didn't have those flaws. So let's think about Cars. In terms of like Lightning McQueen, his like arrogance and hubris caused him to tell his like Mack truck to say, no, we're gonna make it to Florida, like we're gonna drive all night because I need to beat Chick and I'm the greatest racer of all time, and like to treat people poorly, right? So that like actively caused him falling out of the truck because by result, like Mac was sleepy. So that's an example of having a character flaw actively impacting your story. Okay, cool. And then, you know, by the end, he learns how to treat people better. And that's a dynamic character. Oh, we have a question. Okay, two popular story structures, yes, are Save the Cat and Hero's Journey. Have those models become so commonplace that they are no longer considered unique? Yes and no. So you can think of this as literally like both Save the Cat and Hero's Journey. Because this is all Save the Cat, right? All of this like this terminology like salvation, resurrection, and what I like said here, like the lowest low is like the dark place or whatever. No, it's not considered kind of bad, I guess, or like I don't know what you said, like outdated, because a lot of movies get made that way still. Like think about Iron Man and like all those superhero movies. But my concern is that, you know, this is kind of a set formula and people think that they absolutely, you know, have to follow this. And by like page 60, there has to be a turning point, meaning that like the character is no longer the same and can no longer be the same. And the plot shifts completely. Like, sure, it doesn't exactly have to be in the middle. You don't even, I don't think, need to have it. You can have it at like page 80. And again, you can shrink these things to make them smaller and make them bigger. So I think the problem is that they are following the structure without having something compelling. I don't know. Yeah, my let me see. What was the other question? Hero's Journey. No, I think Hero's Journey works too. I think it's just all about execution. You know, this is here as a guideline. And Save the Cat, I would say, is there as a guideline as well. And I think you can totally deviate from it because there are films that do. Again, like Tarantino and like movies like Y Tu Mamá También. And God, what is that one about the dogs? With the homeless man. Somebody said it last time. I totally forgot. Anyway, but yeah, I hope that made sense. Let me see. There's a new message. How many acts are allowed and how long is each act? Oh, you can, Save the Cat was made by this guy who sold a bunch of spec scripts for like a lot of money. He didn't actually make it as a screenwriter, but he became like a screenwriting guru. And I think that's cool. So I would take all of his stuff with a grain of salt. If you Google it, it's just a book. And it explains this essentially. But how I like to define, you know, the 3-act structure is honestly just a beginning, middle, and an end. You can have 5 acts, you can have 8 acts. And all it's doing is splitting, you know, this into separate pieces, right? So think of it like sequence 1, like that'll just be an act. That'll just be an act. Sequence 3 is just another act. You know what I'm saying? It's just splitting the beginning, middle, end format into different spaces. And that's totally fine. I think what's most important for a story is that you do have a beginning that, you know, sets up something. You do have a middle where stuff happens, and you do have an end that finishes or resolves whatever stuff happened in the middle. Again, people don't necessarily have to learn. The good guy doesn't have to always win. Literally nothing can happen if you think about movies like Tangerine or The Florida Project. It's just kind of, you know, random stuff happens, but in the context of so The Florida Project is like essentially a little girl who lives in a motel with her mom, and she's got friends, and they like go get ice cream, and they, you know, set a building on fire, and those literally contribute to, I guess, nothing But eventually like she gets taken away. So it's just the story of like the little girl living her life doing seemingly like random things until she gets taken away from her mom. So again, that does have a beginning, middle, and end, but it's not a set structure like this is. Yes, sometimes there's not a happy ending. They can die. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so this is just a guideline. And I always recommend this for newer writers because it does get you thinking about that. What should go in the beginning, what should go in the middle, and what should go to an end. Because like that story that I said where the little girl gets taken away, that is the end event that the whole thing was leading up to. Like she has to do things and the mom has to do things that will culminate in the girl getting taken away. They don't necessarily, again, have to really make sense in the moment when you're watching it. And they may seem like, you know, they don't fit together or like the characters aren't learning, but that's the thing. Okay. Okay, sorry, going back to this. Yeah, because beginner writers tend to just write things that are all over the place. And it seems kind of like there's no structure. That's why I recommend this, just to get into the habit. I wouldn't even like do an outline. Maybe I would just like split this down the middle and write like events. You know what I'm saying? Just like with pen and paper. And then write your script however you want, but just kind of, you know, have the beginning, middle, end in mind. Okay, that's it. Okay, so let's talk about flaws. Ugh. Let me get a drink of water. Okay, so a flaw is essentially a trait that damages. That's it, really. It can damage oneself. It can damage other people. Yeah, that's a flaw. Okay, so a major flaw is what, you know, most characters in stories have. It usually comes from their past and like a painful experience. So again, like, you know, people think in terms of major flaws, it's like, oh, like they were abused as a child, so they like hate the world. But no, it can literally be like she fell off a horse, so now she's scared of horses. And that developed as a result of a painful past. And as a result, it impacts how they interact with people. And another very common one also is like, you know, people like hurt me and they made fun of me in the past, and like relationships were just using me. And so now my new judgment going forward in life is that people will always hurt me and let me down. They don't actually care about me. So now I'm going to shut myself off from everyone, not let anybody in, you know, put up my walls. And that is how I interact with people. And that's a lot of like those cool guy archetypes in movies. And that they end up hurting like their new romantic interest because they've shut themselves off. Okay, cool. So yeah, they're life altering. And it's again usually as a way to protect yourself, but you're actually hurting yourself, like with those walls that you build up. Because in trying to protect yourself and putting up those walls, you're hurting yourself through isolation and not creating meaningful relationships. I hope that makes sense. So that's usually what we see, and that's usually what we see in villains, to a greater extent. And that's kind of what drives their negative actions to do what they do, because they're hurt. Okay, lesser minor flaws are again just they're literally what they mean. They're like not that bad. They're like a part of who they are, and they can cause inconvenience sometimes, but they're like not a big deal. People can usually live with them. So it can be as small as like my husband doesn't do the dishes, and like that makes me stressed and can cause like minor friction. But the fact that he doesn't do the dishes, you know, is falls under the umbrella of that, you know, he is inconsiderate of my work that I do in the house, and he's like selfish or whatever, you know. So like the relationship is not going to fall apart just because the husband didn't do the dishes. It's going to fall apart because, you know, the husband may have other flaws that are impacting that. Okay. A fatal flaw is like a major flaw, but like 10 times worse. It usually highlights something inside that is preventing them from happiness. So usually when you start off a story, your character is stuck in their status quo, and they're just going to stay that way until they fulfill their fatal flaw. Like with the movie Cars and Lightning McQueen, his fatal flaw, which is a little bit more than his like major flaw, is his narcissism and arrogance. So he can like be successful in his car driving or whatever, but he will never be happy and fulfilled if he keeps on that path. Because as you saw, like, you know, he had all this glitz and glamour, but his life was empty. On the inside, he was empty. So unless they change that, then they will never be fulfilled. And your tragic flaw is a step ahead of your fatal flaw. So you often see that in like actual tragedies. If you think about like Sweeney Todd, it's a barber who like was sent to jail by this judge, and the judge like stole his wife and like stole his daughter and is now gonna like marry his daughter. So he wants to come back and kill the judge. And he is so consumed by the need to kill and his need for sorry, my mic turned off. He is so consumed by his need for revenge that, you know, people are telling him, or the Helena Bonham Carter is telling him like, hey, you should just calm down, and he like cannot see it. You know, all these things happen as life lessons to show him that revenge is not the way, and he needs to like take a chill pill and stop killing people. But he has blocked himself off. So when a character has blocked themselves off, their fatal flaw becomes a tragic flaw, and it usually leads to their demise. So at the end, you know, he is so clouded in his judgment that he cannot see that his wife is in front of him, and he ends up killing his wife. And that's usually what happens in tragedies, that their demise is their own doing. Yeah, and then he like treated this little boy poorly, and the little boy killed him with his own like barber tools. That usually happens too in tragedies, that the tool that they use to kill or whatever, or like to hurt somebody, is usually something that is hurting them. And again, they usually die. So I mean, they don't always have to die. They can end up as like, I don't know, just sad people. But tragic flaws usually end up with death. Okay, let's see. What if a character's flaw is that they're not capable of happiness? Ooh, that depends. Again, if that they are incapable of happiness, could be a core flaw. But it could also be a fatal flaw, in that if it is a fatal flaw, that means that, you know, they are less susceptible to being influenced by like other people. So let's say like there's this person who is super duper depressed, and there's this other friend who wants to take them out of their depression, and the friend is literally doing all they can. A major flaw would be like the depressed person is going to go out with their friend and like not have a good time, and it's going to cause conflict at the outing event, right? A fatal flaw would be pushing their friend away and saying, no, I'm going to stay home in my bed and like lay in the darkness because I don't want to talk to you. And then the friend would come over constantly until they eventually like push them away. And if it is a fatal flaw, once their friend has stopped interacting with them, then they'll say, oh no, my friend is gone. maybe I should try to make some change on the inside because I have lost this valuable relationship. If it is a tragic flaw, then they will say, screw you, friend, I don't need you. I don't need anybody, right? And then they would just be sad forever. Okay, let's see. Yes, a single flaw can fit into multiple categories. Well, kind of. Usually fatal flaws and core flaws are often intertwined and interchangeable. I think about it in terms of like strength. So a core flaw, like I said, that it's not strong enough to keep the depressed person in bed. Like they're still going to go out with their friend. They're just not going to have a good time. And a fatal flaw is like the depression is too strong, which I don't think depression is a flaw, but in terms of this, like it's too strong. I'm not even going out. So I would think about it in terms of strength and intensity. But yeah, they can be like the same motif or same theme can fit into any one of these things. So even like a minor flaw, like they can just be kind of sad. And that doesn't really affect anybody. It's like, oh, that guy who's just kind of like negative sometimes, but like, oh, we're still having a good time. He still jokes. That would be a minor flaw. Okay. Hope that made sense. Any more questions on the types of flaws? Okay, cool. I'll move on. Okay. Oh, okay. So when developing your character, drink some more water. It's a good idea to define their motivation. We kind of talked about it before. How it was a little bit different in terms of their goals. So sometimes goals can happen out of circumstance, right? So like in the terms of like Harry Potter, it just kind of happened to him, right? He didn't choose to be the chosen one. But now his goal has to be, to kill Voldemort because the whole world is counting on him. But what is his motivation internally? It's to rid the world of like evil and to an extent like get vengeance for his parents, and to protect his loved ones and his friends. And that is his motivation for doing the action of like fighting Voldemort. So yeah, it's important to think about those things. Okay, then figure out your character's central conflict. So again, think about it in terms of like beginning, middle, end of the story. It doesn't have to be from the time somebody is born till the time somebody dies. It can literally just be my dishwasher isn't working. And the whole story takes place in like middle of like span of a few hours. My central conflict is my dishwasher isn't working. So now I've got like soap and water all over the floor and I've got to clean it up because I have to like a meeting to go to and I've got to call the plumber, but like the plumber guy is not available. You know what I'm saying? So it's just thinking about what conflict in that moment drives the character to act. Okay, cool. And again, how your character will change over the story. We're talking about dynamic characters, so we're assuming that they are going to change, but they really kind of don't have to in terms of writing a script. There are a lot of characters that stay the same, like with Sweeney Todd, and that's usually in terms of tragedies. He was still a super interesting guy and you felt for him and you really like sympathized and empathized with him, but he shut everybody off. He stayed the same and it led to his demise. And that was cool. So just think about, is my character going to change to teach somebody a lesson, or are they not going to change to teach somebody a lesson? I think the most interesting and compelling stories have themes. They don't necessarily have to, improve someone's morality, but they should say something about the state of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like your theme can literally be like People are innately bad, and that's okay. If you know you believe that. Oh, what the heck? That's totally fine. But your character should, you know, change to demonstrate your theme. Okay, let me see here. What if a character's flaw is they're not capable of happiness? Okay, we saw that. Yes, he is static. That's exactly right. A Clockwork Orange protagonist is static. So yeah, he goes through, you know, the act of the goal is to reform him and to change. And it's okay that he's not an active character. People often say that, you know, your protagonist has to be active. And sure, I think for beginner writers, that makes a more compelling story, just because it's a little bit harder to create events that kind of happen to the main character, and still make that character kind of empathetic and sympathetic to the audience. But yeah, that's an example of, you know, that while he's in the prison or whatever, in the asylum or the foreign place, that stuff is happening to him and he's reacting to the things happening. And he doesn't change. And that doesn't lead to his demise at all. That says that, like, yeah, people are the way they are and nobody can change that. And that fits the theme. So that's a great example. Okay, develop your character's backstory. I like to do this even if, you know, you're never going to see it, just to kind of give someone dimension. Again, like I said, it was something as simple as like a little girl fell off a horse when she was a kid and now she's scared. No one's ever going to see that, maybe. We're never going to talk about it, but it might affect how she, you know, rides moving objects. You know, so, or how they interact, because a lot of that happens with like supervillains, that their past immediately impacts what they're doing currently, because a lot of the times it's in response to them being hurt in the past. So just to think about that, I think it makes for a more real person. Okay, another question. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Linda. We will have this recording anyway and the slides. So if you would like to watch it later, you totally can. Okay, define your character's superficial characteristics. So yeah, like I said, you should kind of have an image of what the character looks like, and more so, I think, how they act versus how they look like. Again, just from a business standpoint for casting. But I mean, you can do it. Like, look at Harry Potter. They cast a guy who, like, I think looks just like Harry Potter. And like the Weasleys, like, they're pretty spot on. So if you've got the budget and you've got the money and, you know, you want like a blue-haired alien with specific tattoos, and like specific colored eyes, and you have all that money to do like hair and makeup and stuff like that, then that's cool. Go ahead. Okay, let's talk about character archetypes. Again, these are not essential, but I find that most characters do fit into an archetype. Okay, so we often have a hero, right? These are their characteristics. This is an example of maybe some of their flaws. And then we also often have like the innocence or the lover, the caregiver, always have like a comedic relief character. And I think like a sage or something. I think that's the magician. No. Anyway. Oh, here he is. Here's a sage. Somebody who like is their mentor, who like offers them wisdom and like helps them fight the bad guy. So I think it's just important to, you know, keep in mind when you're writing your characters, and to think about their psychology. So a lot of people use archetypes in terms of like, okay, let me write this superhero and he's just gonna be this, you know, specific archetype. And it feels fake, right? It feels like he's actually a character and not a real person. So a good example, I think, of a compelling character would be Iron Man. I think Superman is an archetype because he's just like this perfect superhero, right? But Iron Man is like a rich guy, or like Batman. They're just like rich guys who are kind of crazy and are playboys and like drink sometimes. And that helps them become more real and I think more compelling. So yeah. So I think it's important to analyze, you know, why they decided to be whoever they are. Okay. And also I think a cool idea is to create some pairs. So how can, you know, a lover and a caregiver be a good match? Because, you know, they both have like compassion, and the lover who has a willingness to sacrifice himself will be cared for by the caregiver, and then he will never have to sacrifice himself. That's a good pair. On the other hand, this can lead to like a really toxic codependent relationship where they're kind of too into each other and shut the whole world out. And that's not healthy. So I think it's cool to kind of play with this and think about what kind of people could be good matches and like good opposites based on their traits. Kind of cool. Okay. Any questions about like archetypes? Oh, one question. Are there usually archetypes that work better with each other? I mean, yes, to an extent. It's this guy is like not on here. So this is is it the Jungian? I don't think you pronounce the J. Archetypes. There's 12, but now they've added like the like evil guy, like the devil character, and the whatever. It's usually that like the hero is opposed to like the devil character, and again like the sage usually is the mentor of the hero. And again, there's usually like a guy that is a friend for comedic relief. Those are usually archetypes that are used because they work well with each other. Are they overused? Who knows? But in my opinion, as long as you can make them fit, you can use whatever you want. But yes, to an extent, there are archetypes that have been used because they fit nicely. Okay. Is there such thing as too much change? Yes, kind of. And also no. So I like to think about the Christmas story, Christmas Carol, with Scrooge, Ebenezer Scrooge. Literally this whole event happens within one night where he sees like all the ghosts and they take him to like past, present, and future. And he's this like really angry guy who is stingy with his money and only cares about himself. And he's lived like that for literally his whole life. And he's like really, really old. And to say that he changes drastically and is now a giving person over the course of one night is a little bit much for me. I get the morality. I get that it's a children's story, but I would just, think about that. Is the amount that they change correlating with, the timeline and the events that happen? So yeah, people can change, drastically in the course of a week, but stuff has to happen to them. Like major stuff has to happen to them usually to get them to change that fast. Or like there has to be some sort of ultimatum. Like for a relationship, for example, like the lady's like, I'm gonna leave you, I'm leaving right now. Our marriage is done. I'm taking the kids. And the guy's like, oh no, or vice versa. My kids, you can't take them away. This 20 years that we've been together, I can't throw that all away. So something really drastic. And with relationships, people don't usually change within like a week. There's usually like a nice week or two where they're perfect and then they kind of fall back into their old ways, and then it happens all over again. So it's just a cycle. So yeah, more believable if they are essentially the same person, but again their attitude, their morality, or their worldview has been shifted in some way. So for example, Cars, Lightning McQueen, he really the only thing that shifted was his arrogance. Like he's still kind of confident and cocky, but he's just not overtly mean to people anymore. And I think that's more impactful. Okay, let me see. So it's unrealistic to have explicit change. Again, it really just depends on your timeline. I mean, the Lightning McQueen example, like that's explicit. Like he was a mean person and now he is no longer mean. Like that's pretty explicit. But to have him, you know, be a completely like humble person who never brags, who like gives to everybody and who like doesn't like the spotlight and stays in the sidelines, that's what I'm talking about. That's I think too drastic of a change. But Lightning McQueen, he still likes the fame, you know. He still again is confident and cocky. He just is not a mean person. So I think he still kept his essence. He's just a better person now. So yeah, so take subtle in the terms of like how you will. And again, you can totally have explicit change that changes somebody drastically. I just feel like a lot of stuff has to happen to them. And usually best done over like several films, because 120 minutes is a tight time frame. Okay. Oh, any questions about that before we look at some examples? Okay, cool. Let's look at some examples. Wow, look at that. It's Harry Potter. So I've been watching Harry Potter and I like it. Okay. So here are some archetypes, right? He's obviously the hero. It's obviously like the devil character, but also I guess a creator. They've added so many archetypes. And I think that's pretty accurate, you know. He wants to realize the vision of a perfect wizarding world. And he wants to improve the world, right? So these both oppose each other because he's got a bad solution to what the perfect world means. And this guy wants to make it equal for all and like love and peace. This guy is also like the comedic relief sometimes. So these can be interchangeable. We often think of them as like the comedic relief, but they're not always here. And he's here for a lot of the times, but you know, he wants to be the friend and he fears like not having his friends and being unwanted. And I think that's important. So yeah, she's obviously the sage, blah, blah, blah. Cool stuff. Okay. So what makes, I think, let's go with Ron. What makes Ron, I think, a dynamic character is that at the very beginning of the books or the movies or whatever, he was kind of just seen as support for him, right? He was just the background friend, always there to offer himself whenever Harry needed. But later on, that is not all that he is. He essentially is not the perfect friend who's, you know, self-sacrificing. He's flawed and he has jealousy. And several of the films mention like his jealousy and saying like, oh, I'm just Harry Potter's like stupid friend. And by the end, like the last book and the last movie, he actively causes harm to these two people through his actions and through his flaws. And when he wears that like Horcrux necklace around his neck, it causes his flaws to be exasperated. And it brings out the worst in him. And I think that is important to creating a dynamic character because you have to have flaws that show themselves and then show him overcoming those flaws. And again, a dynamic character is somebody who changes. Ooh, okay, howdy folks. Hi Dan. Okay. Again, somebody who changes, not necessarily somebody who's interesting. Okay, same with Snape. You know, he was quote unquote like a bad guy. And he was a bad guy to the kids, and that's like all they saw him as at the beginning, as just this like evil teacher who was mean for no reason. But then we learn he was mean to Harry because Harry reminded him of his dad that used to bully him. But he was still taking care of him out of the love that he had for his mom. So he's fighting that duality of like hating Harry because he reminds him so much of the guy that like bullied him every day. But having the love for his mom and feeling a sense of duty and compassion to the kid. So it's interesting to see, to like understand that and see how he struggles with that duality. And the same thing of when he's like a spy for Voldemort, how he has, again, it goes about like motivation and how he expresses himself outwardly, how he expresses loyalty to Voldemort, when his motivation is really to be loyal to Dumbledore. So I think that's cool. That's cool. Okay, that's enough about them. Same thing with Voldemort and Draco. They are often seen as pure evil. Voldemort's seen as just like pure evil, just for no reason, but that is not the case. He was an outcast as a kid. He like did not have a home, and he found his home in Hogwarts, and like his dad was mean to him. So in ways they're very similar. And because he had a terrible childhood full of like people that hurt him, again, he put up this worldview, like everyone is going to hurt me. People are bad. I have to create a perfect society where people are loyal to me, and people have never been loyal to me out of love. So how can I achieve that? Through fear. And that has created his character. And he is, I feel more compassion for him because of that, versus if he were just like all evil, I'd be like, oh well, you know, that's kind of boring. Why is he just doing bad things for no reason? It's more compelling when you have that kind of a backstory. Same thing with Malfoy. It's kind of like a little shit at the beginning, and you're like, oh, he's just a little bratty kid. Nobody likes him. But then you learn that like his dad like abuses him and is mean, and all he wants is approval from his father mostly. But within like the Death Eaters in his family, because he's always seen as less. You know, he's less to Harry. He's less to everybody, and he will never be as great as his dad. And he's just constantly looking for approval. So his actions like show that, and it's impactful. So yeah, and then he eventually changes because he realizes that, you know, his dad's bad and he doesn't need to follow the Death Eaters. Okay, cool. That's all I have. Anything, any questions on like why this is more compelling versus if they were just pure evil? Okay, no, cool. Well, thank you. We have reached the end. Thanks for sticking around with me. These are some pretty good resources. I honestly say the best resource is to just read. Read scripts. Books too, if you like, just to get a sense of, you know, characters and story structure. But scripts for the most part. If you want to write this down, you don't have to. I'm gonna send you the slides anyway. Yes, you're raising your hand, Ellen. I think you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question.
I had a question. Are you able to give us like an example of a script that you've written? Because for me, it's kind of hard to find scripts that I can look at as examples for the formatting, which is what blocks me, I think.
Yeah, all these questions have scripts that have been, you know, written by people. But what I can do is when I send you guys that email on the website, I've posted the slides, and I have my first lesson that I did was specifically on script format. So the slides are on the website for how to format screenplays, and they have excerpts from my own screenplays as well as others, but I hope that helps.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. You have a question in the chat. What about action characters from 90s films? How does he change? Oh, I don't know who John McClane is. I'm sorry. But a lot of films in the 80s and 90s do change. I don't know. Let me see. Like, what's his name? John Connor from Terminator. He in the second film, he kind of, you know, goes from like also being like an arrogant little boy um to having this like trauma happen to him and not being like humbled, but just like being more subdued and caring about humanity. Because at the beginning he's like riding his bike or whatever, and he like really doesn't care. He's like mean to his parents, his like foster parents. But because he sees that the world is finite, he becomes a better kid. Okay, another question. Should I give my characters moral choices? Does that make them more compelling? Yeah, I should. I think that falls into conflict. A lot of times our conflicts deal with our morality. I don't know. Yeah, that's my answer. Thank you for your information. Oh, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming. Yes, posting the slides. Oh, John McClane is from Die Hard. Oh, yeah. I like Die Hard. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with like character names and like names of titles, which I know is terrible, but yeah, he does become a better husband. It's a Christmas movie. Just kidding, I don't know. Some people say it's not a Christmas movie. But yeah, and then even like in the recent ones, I remember with the one with that other guy who's like his daughter's boyfriend or whatever, and he at first hates him, and then by the end of the movie they're like best friends. That's an example of change and like acceptance and accepting people, and then the daughter's boyfriend changes and becomes more assertive. So if you have any tips on integrating character development into scenes without being boring, that could help. Could you elaborate, please? Into scenes? I would say that character development innately comes from conflict. Oh, mentioned flashbacks before. Yeah, I personally am not a huge fan of flashbacks for beginners, just because I think they are used to offer exposition and to cover up plot holes. Yeah, I know it's a lot of info. I'm sorry. Yeah, but you can use flashbacks. Again, I would use a flashback if it's directly impacting the plot that is happening right now. You mean in the story? Yes. As terms of like character development, again, I would say that it stems from conflict. So all of the conflict that you should introduce has to, well, it doesn't have to, but it should, help your character grow in some way. If the conflict is that like there's a bus in the middle of the road, but I really don't have anywhere to get to, and it's just like a minor inconvenience, like that doesn't tell me anything. And I'm not even like my character isn't even struggling with impatience and like being nice to people, like they're just kind of indifferent, then I would not use that conflict. So if the character has like somewhere to get to in like 10 minutes, and there's a bus in the middle of the road, oh no, how are we gonna clear the bus? That is an example of conflict that impacts the plot. Same thing if they're like struggling with impatience and like that, maybe they don't have anywhere to get to, but he's got like a girl in the car and he starts having anger issues and yelling at the bus and the kids and the school bus, and the girl gets scared. That's an example of conflict that impacts him and how he has to change, or maybe he doesn't, but he should, right? To be more patient and control his little anger issues. I hope that helps. Let me see, there's something else above. Musclehead action characters. Terminator is a good example, but also made really well, so it's an easier one to choose. Yes. Oh, hi, from Australia too. We have 2 people from Australia. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That again, like there are cookie cutter archetypes that people follow. So like those musclehead action characters that, I mean, that's its own kind of genre movie. That you're just watching people, shoot things. I think the older ones do a better job. like Rocky, for example. That's an example of somebody who is, overcoming adversity, and training hard versus like newer boxing movies nowadays. I can't even think of boxing movies. I don't watch them very often. But like Predator, or like oh, that's the good one. The Arnold Schwarzenegger one, Total Recall. So he's dealing with the duality of like his evil self, and at the beginning, we don't know this at the beginning, but at the beginning of the film, he was like an evil, or not the film, but like the timeline, he was an evil person, and then he changed to a good person because of the events that impacted him and like his brainwashing, and he realized that everyone should have air. Yeah, that's an example, like an action musclehead character. Keanu in Speed. Does his character change? Oh god, I haven't seen Speed. I'm sorry. Sorry. I have a lot of subtext I'm trying to cram, but I appreciate it. Okay, I'm sorry. In terms of subtext, yeah, I would maybe just say keep it in your mind. You don't necessarily have to write it all if it doesn't fit. But I think it's good to, have a clear, concise vision of what your character should be like and how they should interact with the world. But again, you don't have to fit everything into your script. 90 to 120 pages is not a lot of time to fit everything in. Like you are not going to get the whole complexity of a person in just 2 hours of sitting with them. You know what I'm saying? So you really don't have to, but it should help in making them seem like they are a real person if you have it in your mind. Does that make sense? Okay, yes. Okay, cool. Okay, any more questions? Sometimes it. Okay, it's almost 7:30, so if you need to leave, you totally can, but I'm here.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, Mercedes. I
Hi.
have a question. At the very beginning, I just want to make sure. At the very beginning, you mentioned if you introduced a character, like I think you said, let's say Timothy Smith IV,
Yes.
and then you say Timothy, so we know throughout the movie, we know who Timothy whole name is. I was just wondering though, I don't know if you ever seen, but Sex in the City, I forgot the Chris North, his character name was Mr. Big, and they didn't reveal who his real name was, at least us watchers, until the very end of the series. So we just knew him as Mr. Big. We didn't know his name was John Smith until the last episode of the show. So how does that work when something like that occurs? They're not really saying his real name. They're just calling him something that he wants someone to call him.
Yeah, that's perfect. So that's what I would call a character ID. That is an identifier, like Mr. Big is the identifier of who he is. And then I haven't like read the script, obviously, but at the very end, I would assume like, you could write it in parentheses, John Smith, like Mr. Big. Or if they reveal it in a certain way, like if they like, I wouldn't use camera movements either. But you can totally just denote it in the script. For something like that, that's big enough, it's fine. I'm not sure if that was your question.
Yeah. So it is okay that we don't really reveal what his real name is, as long as we know how to identify the person
Of
throughout
course.
the show. Okay.
Yes. That is perfect. Great job. Okay, Earl asks, is it quicker to write a script than a book? I mean, yes and no. That's another it depends answer. If turning a book into a script, do you have to cut pages if too many pages? Yes. So with a book, I mean, you don't really have a page restriction. I think a novel is like at least, what is it, like 10,000 words or something? I don't know, 40,000. Yes, this webinar will be available to view later. If you need to leave, don't worry about it. Anyway, so with a novel, you can kind of just like, not ramble, but kind of, you can just like talk and it doesn't really matter. And you can give a bunch of detail and insights into their minds that you can't with a script, because in a script, you should quote unquote show, not tell. So the insight into their mind in a script should be done through action. Whereas like in a book, you can say she was sad. And in a script, you would say like, she ducks her head, a tear streams. Or like he was angry is like, he furrows his brow. So it's just kind of different. In a novel, you would say like he furrows his brow in anger, but in a screenplay, you wouldn't really denote that. So yeah, it just depends. If you're comfortable with writing in that way, it can take longer and be difficult to kind of trim it down into a more concise format. And it can take longer, and vice versa. If you're comfortable writing a script and writing in that concise format, it may take ages to elongate it to fit a book format. So that's that. But yes, there is such a thing as too many pages. A lot of executives like 120 pages, like the cap. 125 is okay. Like 132 is too much. Like they're not going to read it unless you're like somebody huge. So 90 to 120 is like a sweet spot. Like 122 is fine. 125. Again, like 132 is like pushing it. So yes, there is such a thing as too many. Can you write a feature that is also a pilot? Sure. Yes. That's my short answer. Yes. Oh, why am I clicking? No, please. Okay. My question is why that, I mean, if you want to try and sell it both ways, then sure. Like if you want to try and sell it as a feature, but also try and pitch it as a pilot, that could be cool. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Is it good to try and get your script into competitions to promote your name? Yes. There's a saying that's like, don't enter a competition unless you know it's really, really good. But like, how do you know if your script is really, really good? That's all kind of subjective. Get your friends to read it, even if especially if they're not into, writing screenplays, and if they don't know anything about the format. I think it's a good idea just to get your friends to read it, because if it appeals to somebody who is not into film, that's a good sign. But also get your friends or people that are familiar with screenplay format to read it and proofread it, to make sure your formatting is okay and blah blah blah. But I would say don't get your hopes up with competitions, because one of the things that was a semifinalist for one of my stuff went through my school first, and the school rejected it. But like this major competition that's like known worldwide, like it went as a semifinalist. So it's all really subjective. But yes, and screenplay competitions, be mindful that they cost money as well. So just budget for that. But they're good for representation. Usually the stuff you submit into festivals won't get made, but they will help in getting you an agent, because agents like to see wins and like placements. Is it considered normal size pages? Earl asks. I'm not sure what that means. There, and on the website, there's a link to like screenplay formatting. I hope that will help.
I have a
Oh, hi.
question.
Yes.
Okay, I was saying that, like, I think you mentioned it before. You said something about normal size pages. I think you said double space or some format. Say something like that. Remember the last class?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
said something about the script has to be Arial. I think it was. I'm not sure, but you said something like that.
Yes. So that you can find it also on the website, but a lot of the like softwares that they use for formatting will do it for you. But it should be in 12-point Courier font. 12-point font is usually the norm for like anything anyway. But yeah, they're just normal like pages. They're like 11 inches or whatever, like 11.5-inch pages. So I don't know if I can.
So that means don't be single space, right?
I'm sorry?
Single space, right?
Single space, yes, single space.
Okay.
So let me show you. Here's an example. Let me get a script. Oh my goodness. Okay. Here's a real script. So this is what a script looks like. Here's a real one. Right, it says your little title page. I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Just so you can see me better. Okay. Right, and it's just like a normal piece of paper. Like if I take literally like a printer paper, like it's the same size, right? It's just the same size. But you've got, and that's just what it looks like. Like it won't fill up the whole page, like, you know, when you write normally, it will, and it looks full of stuff. But this is the same size font and it's single spaced. So they're gonna look kind of like that. I hope that helps.
Does the page include the first part of the script you said they count as the pages?
Yes. So this is a TV show, but this one. So like you have like the page numbers. So a script should be between like 90 to 120 pages. So like each page is literally just a page. Like this is one page. There's nothing on the back, and then that's page 2, and then there's nothing on the back. Page 3. Does that make sense?
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. More questions. More questions. Let me see here. Da-da-da. I have too much subtext. Was forced to make Twin Peaks a feature, but it ended up being a pilot first. Oh, okay. So as in you're talking about like making it a TV show. Yeah. A lot of stories do fit better as a TV show. So that's just for you to think about. If you've got a lot going on, if you've got a huge world, a lot of subtext, it can be a mini series. So it can be 6 episodes, 6 like 1-hour episodes. It can be 12, or if you've got like a huge world, it can be a TV show that spans for like 6 seasons. It's just how much content you've got. And if it's drama, then it's written exactly the same way as a regular feature script is. So yeah, it's just up to you to decide. But another question. In your opinion, when and where is the best place to do the character exploring? Could it be in the outline or like entirely on its own? Okay, I will answer this part of the question. Again, that's totally like up to you. I like to do it in the shower. So I do it all in my head first, right? I spend like days or weeks or like months just thinking it all out in my head. And then once I've kind of like worked out what the story is and like what my characters are going to be like, I write it down. And I will send you links to how to make like a character profile. A lot of it is just answering questions like, you know, what is their hair color? Like, what's their occupation, or like religious preference? Sometimes I really don't care about that. But as long as I have their motivations down, then I think that's enough. But yes, you can do it in the outline. You can do it however you want. You can write it on a piece of scratch paper. As long as you've got it in your head. And then if it's on how do you take the essentials, specifics, flaws, goals of the character and implement them into the whole story. So again, it's kind of all intertwined with the plot and conflicts. So I would just have that, like all of their essential, their specifics, flaws and stuff. Just think about it. Have it in your mind, have it written somewhere so that when you start thinking about what happens in the story, all of the stuff that you wrote down is going to impact how they react to whatever happens. Does that make sense? So you're not specifically going to write it down. Like you're not going to say, my character has like a Freudian complex, blah, 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 like in the script. It's just going to impact how they react. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to cram all of my symbolism. Yeah, man. Sorry. I can't help you, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe if you've got a lot of stuff, it sounds like you should do a You should do a series or something. What does an agent do, and why do I need one? So basically, there are two things a screenwriter doesn't like. Well, they need kind of. They don't need them both though. So a manager is basically like a babysitter. They tell you to get to work. And they do similar things that an agent does, in that they will find you. They're like the middle person. They will find you ways to get work. An agent though, is more important than a manager because an agent is the one that is allowed because of their license to make the contracts, for you to like sell your scripts or whatever. So an agent also can do some of like manager work in terms of like babysitting and telling you to like write your script and meet the deadline and get them content. But they're mainly for making deals, and a manager is for like babysitting. Okay, see you later. Thank you much. Thank you. Okay, cool. I'm here if you have any more questions, but I see people have left. If you need to leave, don't worry about it. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today. And again, this will all be available as a recording on YouTube, and you will get the link in an email, and you will get the link to the website in an email, and to the character profiles to help you make your stuff, and the slides. So if you have any more questions, let me know. If not, I will be seeing you guys later next time. Also, if you have any ideas on what you would like to know more about in terms of screenwriting, if you have any future classes that you would like to have, you can totally email me to that email that I'm going to send you the stuff at. And if you have any questions that you can't think of right now, you can always email me too. Okay. Oh, one more question. Trouble with my main protagonist, that some people are calling him passive. Okay, so I said this before. It's not necessarily a bad thing that he is passive. It really just depends. They advise it against new writers because it just kind of leads to a boring story if they're not doing anything and not reacting. But how I see passive is that yes, things happen to them, but they should be reacting to the thing that happens to them. They don't actively have to be seeking out, anything. Sure, they should probably have a goal. But if they kind of fail upwards towards that goal, that's okay, as long as they are reacting truthfully to whatever, their character is. A goal as simple as escaping. Well, I mean, that's kind of like an active goal. If they want to escape, why aren't they doing anything about it? So you've got to, like, if they're being helped along the way, that's okay. Like Harry Potter is considered often like passive, that he doesn't really do much, but people just help him along the way. I think that is okay, as long as he doesn't actively reject the people that are helping him trying to escape, or like the situations that are helping him trying to escape. And he can't just be carried the whole way, you know what I mean? Like, he's got to make some effort to do something like that. Yes, you can unmute your mic to ask your question.
Okay,
Oh, sorry,
thank
one
you.
second. Let me go back to Dan's really quick. Character does have someone help them along the way. The protag is trying to escape. I didn't think she was passive. I mean, yeah, if you didn't think she was passive, then like that's fine. Your protagonist doesn't always have to be, the sole person fighting for the thing. Like, they're allowed to have people that help them, because that's what happens in real life. As long as they're not just, sitting on their butt, like being carried the whole way. I think that's fine. I hope that helps. But send it out to more people, I guess. And yeah, okay, you're welcome. Okay, I'm sorry. You may unmute yourself now.
So I wouldn't define it as a problem, but so mine is sort of my screenplay that I'm currently working on is sort of like an alternating perspectives kind of thing, where there's two character arcs and I switch between them. So the first 15 pages, I have around 25 pages right now. The first 15 pages is basically one of the characters, and then the next 10 pages is the other character. And I haven't even gotten to the actual, like the intertwine of the two characters, and I'm already 25 pages through. Is that a bad thing?
No, that's fine. That's your act one. That's your act one is like if you look at the little chart or whatever. Let me go back to my slides. Let me show you. Your act one's like 30 pages long. And if all you're doing is setting up for 30 pages, that's okay. And again, like your act one doesn't need to be 30 pages long. It can be like 50 pages long. And that's totally fine. But look at this. Here's the 30-minute mark. And that's setting up act one. So I think that's totally fine. If you've got 25 pages setting up stuff, because that's right where you're supposed to be. Okay, hope that helps.
I was thinking a bit more along the lines of, if I was someone who doesn't know anything about me and is not a relative, and I'm reading the script, would I want to keep reading? So that's why I was a bit, like, should I just shorten down some stuff or?
I mean, that's a question I can't answer unless I read it. You can totally send it to me, and I can't promise you I will read it soon, but I'll read it if you want. But yeah, I would. Reddit is a good place to put your stuff out there. To often do script swaps. So somebody reads your stuff in exchange for you reading their stuff and offering feedback. A lot of the feedback like isn't great, but if you get like 10 people, then you might find one thing that is actually helpful. Yeah, this person is happy to script swap. But yeah, that's just a question that unfortunately I can't answer unless like you actually read it. In terms of like how to make something that people want to keep reading, I would say as long as what you're setting up feels authentic, true, and like compelling to you, like interesting to you, like you genuinely find it interesting, there's going to be someone out there that probably does too. Because like, for example, my mom doesn't like action movies and she sleeps through them. I do. She loves her rom-coms that are like on Netflix that are, in my opinion, like not very good. And I like cannot sit through them, but she loves them and she'll watch like 5 back to back. So it's just all subjective, really. But as long as you find it interesting and compelling, someone probably will too. I hope that helps. Okay, any more questions? Oh, it did help. I'm
I just
glad.
have one more question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, don't apologize.
So I asked you a question similar to this on the last class. So I was reading through the Clockwork Orange script, right?
Yes.
And I noticed that Stanley Kubrick really didn't be descriptive. He was just like shadows of the Droogs approach the tramp. He didn't describe how the shadows look like. He didn't do any of that stuff. So is that a necessity in a script?
Yes and no. It's totally stylistic up to you. He also directed it, right? Yeah. So if like you're directing, you can be as descriptive or like as not descriptive. You don't even have to follow format. If you're gonna like, for a fact that you're gonna be the one directing, as long as it helps you understand what you're trying to film, then that's okay. And like to an extent, the actors as well, they need to know what's going on. But if you can explain it verbally, as a director, then you're fine. But I think of like Shakespeare, at the very end when like they fight or whatever, all he writes is they fight. So he leaves it completely up to the director on how he wants to choreograph it and do all that. So that's just a stylistic choice. As long as I think you accurately convey something that is essential or is going to further the plot, how descriptive you want to be is totally up to you. that helps. Okay, any more questions? Okay. Dan, thank you so much for offering to script swap. If you want to send him your like handle or whatever in a direct message, that'd be cool. Also, I'm totally up to for like you guys networking or whatever. So if you want to leave your information so that people can make more screenplay friends and you guys can like all script swap, if you're comfortable with that, that would be cool. A lot of people say like no networking, but I don't care. I think that's what this like industry is for, to make new film friends. Okay, if there's no more questions, then thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Yeah, write your emails or whatever. I hope to see you next time. I don't know what we're doing next time. We're probably gonna do plot, maybe. I think we're probably gonna do plot. So yeah. Okay. Give you time to write down those emails, just take a picture or whatever. Thanks for joining me. Happy holiday season. Yeah, next one will probably be like after the holidays, maybe in January, because I'm busy. Okay, thanks. Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you so much for this.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. And again, if you need to reach out to me, you can always email with questions. Okay, bye.